residences. Now, according to the World Health Organization, depression continues to be the most common illness worldwide. Now, to bring you closer home, in 2017, Kenya was ranked 4th in as far as people living with depression is concerned. Now, of greater concern is how many young people are committing suicide, and the reason being depression. So today we have a candid conversation about depression and understand why the younger generation is battling with depression. Before we get to it, here now is the fact of the matter. Depression is characterized by, among others, sadness, loss of interest or pleasure, feelings of guilt or low self-worth, disturbed sleep or appetite, feelings of tiredness, and poor concentration. Depression can be long-lasting or recurrent, substantially impairing an individual's ability to function at work or school or even cope with daily life. At its most severe, depression can lead to suicide. According to the World Health Organization, the mental state of the world's youth is of concern, with depression reported to be the third highest disease burden among adolescents globally. In Kenya, depression is the second leading cause of death through suicide among youth aged between 15 to 29. While depression can be treated and symptoms can be alleviated, depression cannot be cured.
For my daughter, I think she started getting sick when she was about 14. Sometimes she'd go to school and she wouldn't be able to concentrate. And what happens when the mental illness is not acknowledged and treated, it comes out as psychosomatic illnesses. So she'd have headaches, she'd have stomach aches. She used to cut her arms, and I didn't realize it when it was actually happening that she was doing it. I just saw the scars later. But we're able to talk about it, and it is basically just a coping mechanism for whatever pain or whatever things she's feeling inside her. And so she would go for therapy, and it really helps because she'd be able to talk about the things that are on her mind. There was a season when there was a teacher in school who was basically bullying her. So in fact, for that season, I actually pulled her out of school until we were able to resolve the issue with the administration. Another season that she went into a very, very, very deep depression is when her biological father passed on. It really, really affected her. But I like the fact that she's able to talk. We have built a very good relationship over time. There are days when she almost goes for 2 or 3 days without eating a proper meal. There are times when maybe you're supposed to be doing something with her and she's snapping at you. Sometimes it's anger, an unreasonable amount of anger. However, within the wider family, there has also been a little bit of a lack of understanding. Like now at 20, she still hasn't gone to college because we are still trying to figure out what's the best way for her to do it. And you find that people are like, you know, by now she should be in her 2nd year. And yet we're dealing with different challenges from your average 20-year-old. And what I can also tell other parents is that you need to take your children seriously. If your child says they're being bullied in school, look into it. If your child tries to talk to you about something, don't dismiss it.
Well, depression is the leading cause of death among the youth between 15 and 29. Yet, this is a conversation that we are yet to have, and have it candidly. That is what we're going to have today. And to help me do that is Dr. Boniface Chitayi. He is a psychiatrist, and Corinne Kahi, who is living with depression. Thank you for your time. And as we said, not many people speak about depression, if at all.
Yeah.
And still viewed as a Western illness. Now, when you were diagnosed, was it at 15 or 16?
At 15, I knew I had depression. Okay, I figured that I had depression, but I was diagnosed at 21.
How was that for you? What made you feel like you were battling something?
At first, it was sadness. So I was like, yeah, maybe I'm just like really sad all the time. But I realized that I had a problem when I began to attempt suicide and contemplate it and actually like attempt. It's just that it didn't work. And even then, mental health wasn't being discussed as much as it is now. So it was me and Google. It was me and Google. I was like, so what are the symptoms of depression? I was like, I'm ticking everything and I'm like, wow. So I tried to now figure it out since then until 21 when I was like, I need to actually get checked.
At this point, you shared your struggle with anyone?
No. I hadn't spoken to anyone because like my friends knew I was sad sometimes, but no one really, like it didn't go beyond that. In adolescence, you're going through a lot of, no one really cares at that moment. When you tell, your parents wouldn't really understand. You also have, it has a shame to it, where you know, I'm sad, but you don't want to look like you're having a pity party and like you need to kind of man up, or girl up, I don't know.
Okay, Dr. Chitayi, does that sound familiar, going by the experience you have with the many that walk through your doors?
Gladys, every experience is different. Everybody goes through their own experience, and it's because human beings are unique individuals. Every person is shaped by their own experiences. And so how these things manifest will be different for different people. And but commonly, what is there is that there'll be sadness, like Corinne says, for most people, and there'll be lack of interest in any activities that bring pleasure. And you know, like eating, watching movies, going out with friends. No, a person will not derive any pleasure from that. And there'll be also just lack of energy. You'll simply not be interested in you know, lose hope in the future. And generally, you'll have poor appetite, which then you may lose weight. Some people eat more, so they gain weight, and you lack sleep.
So in the case that she was not able to tell anyone because of what she thought it would be interpreted as, sounds familiar.
Yes, sounds familiar, because you want to maintain your personal dignity within the society. And a label of a mental illness comes with a lot of disadvantages and disability then that is brought because of that. And so nobody, you know, wants that label on them. Because now people will underestimate your abilities in school, at work, you know, within the family. Yeah, it may undermine your own authority within the family. And also the adolescent stage, where it occurred for her, is the period when people are considered to be going through emotional turmoil, trying to discover who they are. And so people will ignore these things and say, okay, you're just growing up, you'll get over it.
Now, Corinne, at 21, you were finally diagnosed. At that point, why are you now brave enough to at least share with your family members?
I did share with my family members at 23.
2 years later.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But I was able to share with my friends at that moment.
And what was the reaction with the friends?
My friends understood, I think, because our generation is now more aware of it. So some understood, but I wasn't ready to tell the world yet. But I was able to tell just the few friends that I trusted, and they've been there for me. Like until now, oh, trust me, they've been the strength and the support, which is a really important thing.
And at home, how was that taken?
Our parents really don't understand mental health. Like to them, it's like, yeah, we all went through bad things, but you know, like you just take it in and move on. So they really didn't understand what you need to be depressed for. You're a child, or you've not started paying bills, you've not started like having real stress. When I told them even about suicide, of course they were angry because to an African parent, you wanted to kill yourself. Were you thinking about us? You know, like it becomes, I don't know, they feel like it's offensive, like it's selfish. So it was taken a bit heavy by my family, but they eventually warmed up, and we don't talk about it much though.
To date?
Not, yeah, even to date, yeah. But it's not because they don't care, it's because they don't know how to handle it. So
okay, now, Dr. Chitayi, before we take a short break, depression is the second leading cause of death among the youth, as I had mentioned earlier. And actually, at least 12 university students are said to have taken their lives in 2018 due to depression. So clearly, it is something that is top of the list and points at suicides. Why now more than before?
A lot of illnesses are increasing generally, and globally, depression is one of the illnesses that causes great disability and is said to be increasing to take even second position among the diseases that cause the greatest disability by next year, 2020. That was the projection below cardiovascular diseases. Probably some of the reasons that have been given as to why now more than before. One is just increased awareness. We may be seeing it more because more people are now aware that this is an illness. Previously, probably it was not considered an illness by many, had other explanatory models that they used, so we didn't know. And then lifestyle changes in our time, whereby there are more family disruptions than before, and we know that these are some of the contributory factors to depression.
So these numbers, as Dr. is saying, are higher now, or maybe we know more about it now when we come back from the break. Welcome back to Health Diary. My name is Gladys Kashanja. The conversation today is depression, and more so the fact that the same is being seen in more youth today. To help me have this conversation, still with me, Dr. Chitayi, a psychiatrist, and Corinne, who is living with depression. Now, why, from your own experience and observation, that we are having more young people battling depression today?
Social media has had a huge part to play in, especially the younger millennial generation. We always put our best foot forward on social media. So when you see that and you're not at that level, you begin to feel depressed because it's more of an, what am I doing with my life? And then you feel like you're not good enough or you're not worthy enough. And so that does a thing on your mind, and you begin to slide into depression because you're like, I can't afford to go to Dubai for a holiday. I can't afford to do this. Things that generally for us, like for the older generation, it was, you knew how to stay in your lane. Like staying in your lane, it was kind of normal. It's like, yes, to go, but one day I'll work hard and I'll eventually go,
Dr. Chitayi, she just mentioned the fact that the older generation knew how to stay on their lane, but also we seem to have had some shock absorbers that helped us through the peer pressure then. So what is it about this generation that's making it more difficult to cope with such experiences?
I think it's true to say that social challenges will increase with time. As the population increases, resources are few. If they remain constant, then we'll have problems of unemployment, for one, and that leads to poverty, that leads to frustration, and then people will adopt poor coping mechanisms, and one of them being use of alcohol and drugs to cope with their stress. And that is a big problem. Perhaps the previous generation, and even now, I mean, there are mechanisms that can be positive for coping, and that includes things like sports, people being involved in sports, people being involved in more face-to-face interactions rather than social media, and also embracing spirituality are ways in which people can live healthier lives.
Corinne, you mentioned that even as you came out to your family, it was difficult for them to take it in, but you also came out to the church. How was that reception?
Well, the first time I spoke to a pastor about it, he told me that I just need deliverance. Yeah, like kutolewa mashetani. And that took a toll because I now felt like a sinner, or like you're saying, I have demons inside of me. And I felt like the church at first didn't, I felt like Christian leaders didn't understand how to deal with depression. Maybe it's because they're from, again, another generation. So as a human being, they didn't know how to handle it. It took a while, actually. It took a current pastor now at my church who spoke to me and told me he personally went out of his way to understand mental health so that he can help people in the church who are battling with it. But for most of the time, most pastors just tell you, pray, just fast, just, they don't really understand the magnitude of how it is currently affecting the generation, and they're not also leading people into counseling or medication where need be.
Dr. Chitayi, the reason why I brought this up is because the support system is critical in helping those that are living with depression stay on the path. So those that are helping them walk that path need to be a bit more informed about what's happening currently, right?
Yes, it brings up the question of mental health literacy, knowing what causes mental illnesses, knowing their treatment, knowing prevention strategies, knowing where to send somebody who is having a mental health problem. And sometimes the norm is for them to use religious doctrines to try and explain. And while that is good and it helps a lot of people, there are many cases where these people will need further help in the hospitals. And the good thing is that in Kenya today, there are a number of spiritual leaders, pastors, who bring patients to hospitals with mental illness. It's really commendable. Okay. And so it means that, like she said, that they have gone out of their way to do some learning and know when this does not tie in, with the doctrines. Because at the end of the day, what is important is for us to understand the basic concept about mental health is basically that one should be able to cope with normal stresses in life. You should be able to work fruitfully and productively. You should be able to realize your potential, and you should be able to contribute to the society.
He's brought in getting help, going to the counselor, making sure that you are on treatment. Let's talk about that. How much does that cost?
It would cost me between 3,000 and 5,000, depending on the doctor you're going to see.
So is this a session?
A session. And one of the reasons I stopped was because I couldn't afford it. And maybe he can give me more information about that. But one, it's also hard sometimes for us to know where to go for something like this. I know there are places which I once heard someone speak about going to Mathare. There was a counselor who came and told young people that there's such a really bad stigma against Mathare, but yet their counseling sessions are about 20 shillings per hour, and their medication is greatly reduced. So it's actually a place that you can get things cheaper. But for other places, other counseling areas or doctors who are psychiatrists, it's pretty expensive for especially our generation. If your parents aren't like helping you out with it, it's almost impossible to actually get consistent help.
It is expensive to get help. And do we have insurance companies probably alleviating that cost? NHIF, how does it work?
The problem we have is that most of mental health care is private, and so very few public hospitals offer mental health services, which for me is something that needs correction, because we say that health is a right, and there's no health without mental health, and therefore mental health services should be readily available. A good model is one that is at Kenyatta for young people. There's a youth clinic that is absolutely free at Kenyatta that provides all services in mental health. In Mathare, there's no specifically youth services, so there's just adult services. But generally, we need a model that ensures youth-friendly mental health services in all counties. That's when we'll be able to adequately deal with this problem. Insurance companies will vary from company to company, but yes, now we have insurance companies that cover mental health services. In fact, it is illegal to discriminate against somebody who has a mental illness, including substance abuse.
Oh, that is good news.
Yes, substance abuse is a mental illness, and it should not be discriminated.
You also touched on the fact that there are probably cheaper and faster ways you've come across. For example, making use of the internet or even your mobile phone. How does that work, and how is this critical, especially for the younger generation? There
are services that are free online that can help you get out of certain spaces. They give you encouragements, they give you a space to talk to, even if it's an artificial bot, but like it actually helps because they walk you through a journey. You're able to say what you're going through. They give you even like stress level, what is it called, like measuring your stress level to help you put your mind in check, because sometimes you may be overwhelmed by something that's really not as overwhelming. So it helps you understand, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad do you think you're feeling, and all these things. So there's a lot of resources that's available online that we can use.
Dr. Chitayi, is this a good idea, or should it be taken in with caution?
You have to assess the sources, you know, assess the sources, ensure they are reliable. Personally, from a professional point of view, I trust more sources that are attached to universities. Generally, if it's attached to a university, I trust it more, or a hospital. You know, if it's an online source, I trust it more. You know, just random sources could also bring, you know, come with a bit of risk. And so we should caution people. However, the positive in this is that the only difference between mental illness and there's no difference really between mental illness and physical illness. The body is one, and the mind is part of the body. The mind, all this thing we call mind, which is just about our thoughts, our emotions, and our memory, they all come from the brain, which is part of the physical body. So there's no separation between the mind and the body, and therefore there should be no separation between mental illness and physical illness. They are all physical anyway, you know. And there's a lot of studies that have been done to show that a disease like depression has origins from genetics, from the biology. The structure of the brain is altered in depression, and when we give medication and do psychotherapy, there are changes that take place in the brain to heal it. And therefore, our society needs to take more interest in learning. Our schools, teachers need to be trained more about mental health, to teach young people from a young age to know about mental health, to take care of it, protect it, because we cannot have a society developing without good mental health.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Well put. Again, as you've heard, that mental literacy is of importance if we are to reduce those numbers amongst the youth that are going up and up every day in as far as the struggle of depression is concerned. Thank you for your time. It has been Dr. Chitayi, psychiatrist, and Corinne, who is living with depression. We now look at the health tip.
The moment you strengthen the body, your mind definitely will get stronger. If you're able to hold a position for longer today than you did yesterday, definitely, mostly it's not the physical limitations we have, it's what we tell ourselves in our mind. Yeah, so yoga helps you come out from, you know, the limiting thoughts. You know, I can't do this, I'm not too flexible, yoga is not for me. Yeah, and once you get on your mat and practice yoga, we modify the practice for you definitely.